In 2029, Japan, having secretly concealed the truth about viral contamination, finally faced retribution. The sudden outbreak of the apocalypse virus plunged the city into chaos. Many countries seized this opportunity to intervene militarily, establishing an organization called GHQ. 10 years later, as Shu almost lost himself in the beautiful voice of online singer Inori Yuzuriha, he had no idea that this mysterious girl with flowing pink hair was carrying out a dangerous mission. As a member of the resistance group called Funeral Parlor, Inori successfully stole an important project from the Research Institute and was hunted by GHQ. During her escape, she was wounded by a grenade, but fortunately managed to flee into the sea. The next day, Shu visited his secret base as usual. To his surprise, he found the internet singer Inori there, singing with her back turned to him. Shu was so captivated by her song that he accidentally kicked a can, triggering the security system. After being knocked down, Shu quickly got up, wanting to explain with his lunchbox in hand. But Inori, startled, bumped into the table corner, activating the monitor where Shu had recorded videos of his past. Only then did the tension in the room begin to ease. After Inori finished eating, she curiously questioned Shu, but instead of answering, she turned and took out rope. This scene somehow triggered a painful memory for Shu. Suddenly, the door burst open. Armed GHQ soldiers stormed in from outside. The situation turned dire in the darkness. Inori attempted to escape but was seriously injured, quickly overwhelmed by enemy forces. He had imagined himself shouting heroically to protect Inori, but reality proved him a coward. Faced with the menacing GHQ commander, fear made him hide instinctively. He could only watch as they took Inori away, her blood staining the ground in shocking patterns. The only thing Shu, overwhelmed by guilt for the fourth time, could do was curl up into himself. It was then that Inori's damaged robot suddenly projected a holographic map. Shu remembered the mission Inori had mentioned. Perhaps seeking redemption, he decided to help her complete this task. He brought the items to Roppongi, the most contaminated area where delinquents roamed freely. This time he responded with urgency, clutching the precious cargo tightly to his chest. As the lights came on, the figure walking slowly toward him was Guy, the leader of Funeral Parlor. He effortlessly subdued all the thugs. Surprisingly, Guy knew of Shu, asking if he had truly stood by and watched Inori's capture. As Shu grappled with remorse and uncertainty, unable to answer, a violent explosion echoed in the distance. The desperate GHQ had decided to purge Roppongi completely to recover their lost cargo. This sudden development caught everyone off guard, and Guy could only entrust Shu with protecting the stolen items. Meanwhile, a grenade struck the vehicle holding Inori captive, creating an opportunity for escape. Yet fortune remained cruel. Immediately after escaping, she encountered GHQ's mechanized troops. This time, Shu refused to retreat. Summoning his courage, he rushed forward. As the enemy opened fire, he managed to save Inori, but the protective vial shattered. When he opened his eyes in an unknown space, a mysterious mark had appeared on his arm. With raw power surging through him, Shu dismantled the enemy inlay with his bare hands. Strange, scattered memory fragments flashed through his mind as he heard Inori's voice, a crown of thorns woven with blood and tears. Shu stretched out his right hand, using his newly acquired power of kings to draw forth a gleaming black sword from Inori's chest. This was the birth of the Void Weapon. The energy that soared skyward marked the awakening of a king. When he snapped back to reality, the Indlave's missile was already approaching. Instinctively, he swung the Void Sword, deflecting the fatal attack. Then the boy began his counterattack, performing an incredible display of destroying the Indlave with this newfound power. After defeating the enemy machine, the Void Sword dissolved back into genetic fragments, returning to Inori's body. The defeated Indlave had been remotely controlled by its pilot from a safe distance. Just as Sugumi and Ais, members of Funeral Parlor, were preparing to retreat from their losing battle, a pristine white Indlave emerged from the ruins. The blonde pilot, wearing a bloodthirsty smile, attacked without hesitation. With overwhelming force, he reduced the opposing Indlave to pieces while his partner Sauda watched in horror. Seeing the white Indlave's ruthless assault, Ais severed Sauda's connection to his machine to protect him from harm. At GHQ headquarters, the bald major heard reports of heavy losses, frustrated with no way to vent his anger. As he struggled with how to write his report, Daryl Yan, the son of the GHQ commander, happened to pass by. Desperate to curry favor with this connection to power, the major immediately began groveling. Yet this blonde youth named Daryl showed no respect for protocol or mercy toward the major's attempts at flattery. The humiliated major could only take out his frustrations on the residents of Roppongi. Meanwhile, Guy looked at the escaped Inori without offering comfort. Instead, he declared her actions unforgivable. The void genome that was meant for her, one of only 3 in existence, had now bonded with Shu, giving him the power of kings. Put simply, while Inori's power had manifested as a void weapon, Guy explained to Shu that with this power comes responsibility. But no one could expect a timid high school student to immediately accept the burden of saving the world. Before Shu could process this, Guy's men reported that Daryl was preparing to execute over 100 innocent civilians in a shelter. Guy decided to use this crisis as an opportunity to take action and cement Funeral Parlor's reputation. Daryl, who carried the scent of flowers, was a sadistic killer. To him, a woman's pleas for mercy meant less than a single flower petal. Shu, forced to witness Daryl's atrocities, watched helplessly as the murderer loaded his weapon. A merciless massacre was about to begin. Shu could only watch as the unarmed residents faced execution. This massacre was exactly the opportunity Guy had anticipated. He planned to use pre-positioned missiles to eliminate this executioner. However, GHQ was well prepared and aimed their counter missiles to begin their assault. As the fierce battle erupted, Daryl's excitement peaked as he prepared to activate his Indlev. This too was part of Guy's plan. While his men led Daryl away, Guy sprung his trap. In an instant, GH's command center found itself surrounded by countless missiles. Funeral Parlor demanded the bald major release the hostages, but he turned the tables, revealing he had filled the basement with poison gas. Faced with this situation, Guy chose to reveal himself, though he refused to answer questions about the void genome. The major attempted to use force to extract information. If he had known what Shu was planning from the shadows, he would never have made such a bold move. Guy had calculated everything perfectly. As the enemy counted down from 10, Shu, wielding the void sword, had already struck at Daryl. With 3 seconds remaining, Shu used the kaleidoscope void taken from Daryl to shatter the barrier. Countless attacks were caught on camera as Guy stood motionless. Then something extraordinary happened. All the attacks were reflected by the kaleidoscope's refraction, and GHQ found itself destroyed by its own assault. After the battle, Guy extended a second invitation to Shu. Despite his prowess in combat, Shu chose to decline again. Just as Shu returned to school, planning to forget everything and return to normal life, a new transfer student arrived in class. It was Inori. To his classmates, Inori appeared as a petite and cute girl, but Shu knew she'd be there to convince him to join Funeral Parlor. Shu, desperate to understand the truth, planned to avoid all contact with Inori, but he never expected to end up following her home that night, watching her change clothes through her window in what seemed like a seductive display. That evening, they encountered Guy by the riverside. He revealed that someone had witnessed yesterday's battle. The witness was likely a student from their school, having purchased a replacement device under the username Sugar. Shu realized Guy could sense other people's voids. This student's void manifested as a pair of scissors. To prevent being exposed, Shu would need to find this witness. He chose to test his friend first, but his nervousness led to misunderstandings. What had been hidden for years suddenly became public, and Shu's actions were misinterpreted as those of a perverted stalker. He could only retreat to his secret base in shame. Inori taught him that extracting voids required eye contact, though this proved challenging. Just when he felt lost, Inori offered gentle encouragement. The mission resumed. Learning from his previous experience, Shu decided to practice with his friend Soda. When dealing with male students, Shu showed unexpected boldness. His attacks were relentless, nearly reducing Soda to a vegetative state. As his proficiency grew, he no longer hesitated to confront female students. After countless exhausting extractions, he decided to rest. Through conversations with Inori, Shu came to understand that voids were manifestations of fear and emotion in their owners' hearts, the shape of their souls. Shu was curious why Inori was considered a traitor to the void, but their discussion was interrupted by his class representative. Shu had no choice but to hide in the basketball court with his friend Yahiro. What started as casual complaints turned serious when Yahiro mentioned Funeral Parlor. Sensing something wrong, Shu tested Yahiro by mentioning specific names. The silence between them grew heavy, and Shu noticed his exposed friend becoming increasingly unstable and hysterical. He was forced to extract Yahiro's void, the scissors he'd been searching for. As Inori moved to silence Yahiro permanently, Shu intervened to stop her. He wanted to give his friend a chance. After Yahiro regained consciousness, they agreed to keep each other's secrets. But Shu's kindness proved naive. Trusting Yahiro's words led to his capture by waiting GHQ forces, while Inori's rescue attempt was thwarted by her own companions. In the interrogation room, Major Sigai sought to extract information about Funeral Parlor from Shu, but Shu remained lost in thoughts of betrayal. No answer was given to this question, and the interrogation reached a stalemate. At this time, Guy released the news of rescuing Shu through the news portal. After learning this news, Sigai had a countermeasure in mind. He took Shu to the isolation hospital and told him that his friend sold the equity to exchange for his freedom because he needed money, forcing him to be infected by the virus. After Shu resolved the conflict in his heart, Sigai began to manipulate the narrative again. He explained that GHQ had invested significant resources to control the virus and Funeral Parlor was merely a terrorist group disrupting order. Although the explanation was exaggerated, Shu, who witnessed their atrocities firsthand, did not completely believe their words, so Sigai took another approach. He told Shu that the person they wanted to rescue from Funeral Parlor was actually a criminal named Naruto Enji, not him. When he saw Shu's expression waver, Sigai, sensing an opportunity, took out the locator and instructed Shu to place it near Guy. Inori would choose to jump from the roof regardless of her safety, and her reason for doing so was to see Shu. Not long ago, a famous lawyer approached him, which surprised Shu. However, when they met, it was revealed that Guy had disguised himself as the lawyer. After Tsugumi discovered they were being monitored, Guy revealed his true identity, while criticizing Shu for being naive. He also shared the plan to rescue their companions. Because the Void had given Shu hints before, he became agitated after hearing Guy's plan. He wanted to understand why Guy was fighting. Quietly at this time, Tsugumi completed the hacker intrusion and their system was paralyzed. Funeral Parlor began their full-scale attack according to the established plan. Seeing this situation, Guy hoped that Shu, who was still struggling, would make a decision quickly. Just when Shu was having trouble choosing, he heard Inori's caring voice. Seeing the exasperated Guy questioning Inori why she didn't follow his orders and acted alone, worried about the danger, Shu fled the reception room without hesitation. The plan was disrupted, and Guy could only redeploy and rescue their companion himself. At the same time, Zero, the latest model of mecha, was responsible for protecting Shu's safety. Guy used a rocket launcher to break the bridge, transferring their ally. With an explosion, their companion fell from the air into the pool, landing right in front of Shu. Worried about Inori's safety, Shu took the Void without saying anything. Then Shu found there was an extra gun in his hand. This wasn't an ordinary gun, but a gravity gun that even the Void didn't know about. Shu and his allies cooperated, trying to repel the enemy's mecha troops, but they were soon surrounded. Just when the situation was critical, Inori arrived. When Shu heard her call and looked up, he saw Inori jumping down without hesitation. At that moment, the protective Void stimulated Shu's potential. He gripped the gun with both hands and jumped high, shooting maximum gravity at the ground. In a split second, energy splashed out and all the mechas flew into the air. Shu used gravity to rush towards his beloved. The dazzling light emitted from Inori's body made Sigai, who was guarding the side, order his soldiers not to be reckless. It was a beautiful scene witnessing the birth of their king. The dark long sword of the pain body matched with blood-red eyes, signaling the killing was about to begin. Holding Inori in his left hand and wielding his sword in his right, he fought with deadly precision. In the end, all the mechas turned to dust, and Shu emerged from the ruins holding Inori. This was the third invitation from Guy, who came to pick them up. He hoped that Shu would trust him and follow his orders in the future. After thinking for a moment, Shu, still holding Inori, chose to join. However, when Guy left, Shu kept the locator that had been given to him. From this, it was clear that Shu still had reservations. The words, "It's all Guy who asked me to do this," completely broke Shu's defenses. When he first arrived at the Funeral Parlor base, Gay called him the core of their future operations and asked AS to train him. Although Shu thought a beautiful girl in a wheelchair couldn't teach him anything, there's a saying that trouble comes from the mouth. Shu immediately experienced IS's strength. A single-handed move made the weakened Shu lose consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself unclothed in a strange room. Just as Shu was looking for the locator, Is opened the door. When she accidentally fell to the ground, a misunderstanding was inevitable. After getting dressed, Shu went to apologize to Is. During their conversation, Shu discovered the lost locator was in Is's possession, but she, still angry, refused to return it. She would return the locator as a reward for passing the assessment. But Shu didn't expect his performance to be so poor. His close combat was barely acceptable, he struggled with the weighted training gear, and he nearly killed himself when handling weapons. Fortunately, in the final live fire exercise, Inori didn't turn away and handed over the ammunition. After seeing her graceful skills, he seemed to have improved slightly at working with others. Ice, who observed the whole process alongside Shubungi, wrote, distracted by beauty, on the assessment report. One day, Shu saw all over from training, began to reflect on why he was working so hard. His reward was hearing Inori's beautiful singing in the corridor. Shu, witnessing the scene, recalled their first meeting. When Inori asked why he was at funeral parlor, Shu remembered how she had risked her life to save him. Admitting he came for her, Shu hoped Inori would leave with him, but her next words shattered his defenses. Everything Inori had done for him was actually arranged by Guy. Watching Inori leave, Shu hurriedly followed. He wanted to ask why, but he saw her enter Guy's room. At that moment, Shu's first love seemed to end. He then ran into Is coming out. Seeing Shu's dejected expression, she guessed what had happened. Is didn't explain but remained silent. Inori and Guy met several times each month and everyone pretended not to notice. Shu couldn't understand why he couldn't measure up to Guy. Is said, if you want to know more, then pass the assessment first. Shu, having made up his mind, chose to say goodbye to Is, but he didn't know that Inori went to Guy's room to give him blood transfusions. Shu, who had lost his king's power, performed terribly in combat. During the one-on-one assessment, he was chased all over the field by the opponent's mecha. The combat instructor, watching from the sidelines while drinking, didn't expect Shu to be so ruthless. Despite apologizing, he didn't hesitate to use the Void's power to create a barrier similar to a black curtain. Shu passed the assessment smoothly with help from his allies and successfully joined funeral parlor. However, just as Is handed over his locator, Tsugumi suddenly appeared. She brought everyone bad news. GHQ had launched the Snowfall satellite to carry out a devastating attack on their small team's mission. Only Guy had survived. To prevent the Snowfall satellite from their threatening funeral parlor, Guy planned to use the King's power to completely shut down the satellite system. However, when Guy mentioned the mission had a 35% mortality rate, even Shu opposed it, unable to accept that 1 in 3 would die. Still thinking everyone had been brainwashed by Guy, Shu was considering whether to use the locator after leaving when Inori's voice came from behind. She sincerely asked him to participate in the mission. Meanwhile, Guy, receiving a blood transfusion in the infirmary, removed his leader's facade and began talking to himself. Guy's words of apology to the fallen soldiers were overheard by Shu, who had just returned. Originally, Shu wanted to encourage Guy to stay strong, but when he heard that even Inori was just a tool in Guy's eyes, Shu became furious. The two fought in the narrow space. Guy insisted that as leader, he must shoulder this heavy responsibility. After seeing this other side of Guy, Shu finally decided to help complete the plan. But Guy never expected that just before giving the order, Sagai would anticipate their surprise attack and arrange for Daryl to snipe at Zero and the others. Once the mission began, there was no turning back, and Guy led everyone toward the core area according to plan. Unlike a rookie like Shu, she was formidable and would prove it with her dual guns. After everyone depleted the core's power, their anticipated opponent Daryl also chose to switch to a new mecha. Wielding the gravity gun, they aimed at the satellite's core system, but didn't expect Daryl and his new mecha to fire first. Their movements were smooth and flowing. But when the machine responded, they discovered the core had been destroyed by a grenade and the satellite was falling from orbit toward Earth. In this critical situation, Guy asked Shu to take out the locator he had known about all along. Even then, Sagai spoke, saying he had been waiting for this moment. Guy proposed a deal with GHQ. He would stop the satellite's fall in exchange for them erasing all information about the Void genome. Smart people could understand the implications. Guy planned to use the locator to transmit a signal, creating a triangulation to shoot down the satellite. But Shu realized that if they did this, Guy holding the locator would inevitably become the sacrifice. Just as he blamed himself for being unable to act, Inori stood up, and something extraordinary happened. A new weapon emerged from her body. Finally, before Guy could activate the locator, Shu appeared in time. This time, he took responsibility for the choice. The crisis ended with Shu and Guy making peace, but the vibration caused by the void awakened Shu's sister Mana, who had been dormant for a long time. Because news of his capture by GH spread throughout the school, Shu, upon returning, could hear rumors everywhere. Lisa, the daughter of the student union president and the Cahoan family, stepped in to calm the storm. After school, she told Shu that life had finally returned to peace, but a familiar voice came from behind Is. In the chaos, she kicked the storage box and bumped into Shu. This scene happened to be seen by her mother, who was wearing impressive formal attire. at the funeral parlor headquarters, which had been fighting continuously and maintained steady supplies. They had now secured a logistics route. The Kuhoan Group's market share in logistics had dropped significantly under GHQ control. For this reason, they decided to hold a party on a sea cruise to challenge the GHQ's economic control. Taking this opportunity, Shu, who was called by Guy, prepared to meet with the Kuhoan leadership to discuss cooperation. Shu thought his mother was also on the ship and he was frightened. Wanting to find a place to hide, he bumped into Arisa again. Faced with this awkward situation, Shu could only ask for help from the sociable Guy. Guy easily diverted Lisa's attention to himself. Soon after, the group received Tsugumi's message that GHQ was about to launch missiles at the cruise ship. Dan Eagleman, ever the spirited commander, had just taken office as captain and ordered surface to air missiles to be launched horizontally, aiming to eliminate those who opposed GHQ during their meeting at sea. Shu, who was about to be attacked, hurried to Guy to discuss countermeasures. Guy told him to hurry to the deck and they would meet in 5 minutes. Just when Tsugumi issued a warning with only 1 minute left, Guy brought Lisa to the deck, hoping she would close her eyes so he could cast his magic. Lisa closed her eyes obediently. However, when she opened them 3 seconds later, she was not surprised but frightened. Shu's Power of Kings pulled out a giant void weapon from Lisa's body and blocked the missile at the last moment. After learning that the mission failed, Dan Eagleman remained optimistic and chose to launch all the missiles this time. True to his spirited nature, however, Shu was not to be underestimated. He deployed the void weapon again. The sparks from the disappearing missiles created a beautiful contrast against the cocktail party on the cruise ship. Seeing such gorgeous fireworks, one could only hope that such displays would be possible during the upcoming New Year celebrations. What few knew was that the day's attack had actually been specially arranged by Guy. Soon after, Arisa arranged a team-building exercise to visit the island where Shu and his father had died. In truth, the team building was just a cover. Guy used Soda's void to complete the next task. Although he originally planned to deal with another matter, seeing Inori in a swimsuit at the beach made him think team building wasn't so bad after all. Ayase, who had feelings for Shu, decided to take initiative. After everyone enjoyed the morning, they visited his father's memorial. Guy, who accompanied them, learned from Shu that he hadn't known about his father's virus research. After paying respects, Guy revealed his true purpose was to obtain something called the Void Genome. When Guy learned that Soda was a devoted fan of Inori, he used this to create a diversion. Shu and Guy argued but couldn't find a better solution by nightfall. Soda suddenly questioned Shu's relationship with Inori. Shu, conflicted, decided to prioritize the mission, encouraging Soda to express his feelings while secretly following them to monitor the situation. But when he saw Soda's excitement and watched him hold Inori's hand to confess, Shu could no longer contain himself. The mission's importance vanished in that moment. Soda's void was a master key, capable of opening any security system. As they infiltrated the secret base, Shuichiro Kato, the director of Void Research, activated the defense system after disposing of the guards. The blaring alarms forced Guy and the others to quicken their pace. After bypassing the final security measure, they discovered the Void Genome had already been stolen. Guy had no choice but to retreat, though he suspected who had taken it. After the mission, Soda slowly regained consciousness. Since all funeral parlor members had heard Shu's confession to Inori, he could no longer be shy. The straightforward Soda admitted he also liked Inori. Though Shu expected hatred, he found his fears and found it. When true friends are honest with each other, suspicion fades away. After returning, Hare asked Shu to go shopping together. Since Inori's appearance, Hare had felt threatened. If she didn't confess now, she might never get another chance. As the train braked, Hare found herself in Shu's arms. Just as she gathered her courage to confess, they encountered Hiro picking up scattered medicine. Shu called out to his old friend Yahiro, who had been forced to betray him. They had much to discuss, but they didn't realize that behind the train's security cameras, the cold eyes of the antibodies were watching. It turned out Yahiro had received no help from GHQ after his betrayal. If not for his cleverness, he and his brother would have been eliminated by GHQ long ago. Seeing Yahiro's brother suffering, Shu decided to take them to funeral parlor for treatment, but as they left, the antibodies, who had been waiting, ordered their arrest. Shu extracted a void from Yahiro's body and prepared to fight, but faced with Daryl Yan, they could only flee in panic. Unexpectedly, because Yahiro's brother's virus mutation shared similarities with Shu's power, Daryl's Endlave targeted the wrong person. In an unstoppable state, the Endlave absorbed the virus from Jun, causing a dangerous resonance between machine and virus. Daryl's Endlave began attacking indiscriminately. Seeing Yahiro about to be killed, Shu rushed forward and pierced the Endlave with the void. A white light enveloped him, and Shu found himself in Jun's memories. It was Jun's most precious memory. He wanted Shu to use his brother's void to end his life. When the virus had disappeared, Jun had gained the ability to see the darkness within people's kindness, and he couldn't bear to live with endless sorrow. Lost Christmas. Brother, I'm so scared. It's okay. I'll protect you. Jun died by Shu's hand, and from that day forward, Shu seemed like a different person. He struggled to complete missions, and using voids would trigger flashbacks of killing Jun. The teenage Shu was on the verge of mental collapse. Ever since Hare saw Shu's devastated expression that night, she visited daily, even if just to sit beside him and talk. She and Shu both sought solitude. As he didn't know how to face Inori at home, Hare suggested school might be better for him, but it had the opposite effect. In Shu's eyes, all his former classmates appeared as virus crystals, causing him severe headaches. Hare had to take him somewhere deserted, but Guy found them. Shu finally expressed his feelings, admitting he thought he could handle everything like Guy, but now realized his own inadequacy. Guy, who could no longer watch this, emerged and urged him to recover his spirit. The battle for the Void Genome is about to begin. If you're not capable, I'll kill you and take the power of kings. The Gay was deeply disappointed and decided to abandon Shu and separate him from Inori. Hare witnessed this from the shadows. When Shu returned home, he found Inori waiting. He asked for her new contact information, but Inori hoped Shu would listen to his heart. However, her resemblance to Mana and Shu's thoughtless use of the word monster destroyed their relationship. He wanted to step forward and explain, but all he heard were Inori's tearful words. Shu tried to comfort himself, attempting to return to his previous life. But why did his food taste so salty with tears? After learning that Shuichiro possessed the Void Genome, GAQ imprisoned him, planning to take this treasure out of the country. However, Funeral Parlor, having obtained this intelligence, wouldn't allow it. Guy, who relied on treatments to control his condition, could feel his body reaching its limit. During their conversation, Guy realized Inori's feelings for Shu, and their mission proceeded smoothly. Funeral Parlor members infiltrated the plane without difficulty, but when they captured the control room, they were shocked to find the plane on autopilot, with a message displaying, "Paradise Lost." Under Guy's gaze, the activated Void Genome sang a mournful song. Meanwhile, the distressed Shu sought comfort from Hare, only to receive a sharp slap. Hare wanted him to understand that while she had feelings for him, she wouldn't be a replacement for Inori. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and the Void Genome song began broadcasting widely through the radio, suppressing the crystallization reactions in those who heard it. Under Haruka's direction, vaccinated troops completed the rescue of Shuichiro within the time limit. As GHQ's Inlaves attacked Funeral Parlor, Shuichiro's long-planned scheme finally began. He intended to recreate Lost Christmas from 10 years ago. Shu, hearing the distant song, recalled the original virus outbreak and felt something stirring in the night. People infected by the song showed signs of virus evolution, and the city descended into fear and chaos. At this moment, Daryl piloted his Endlave into the command room, holding his father at blade point. Ironically, his father didn't realize Endlave Pilot 823 was his own son. Meanwhile, Tsugumi used her remaining strength to locate Shu, ready to confront him with accusations. After learning that Inori and Shu were missing, Gai called the classmates together through the school broadcast. At this time, Inori and Shu, who were hiding, met Haruka, who had just escaped. After learning that her son Shu was still in school, Haruka finally breathed a sigh of relief, but Shu knew that Gai would definitely come to save them. In the secret base, there is a website that Mana has made public to the classmates, hoping to get everyone's help. So Haruka, who is Sige's assistant, thought of a way to crack the spread of the apocalypse virus under the cover of suppressing them. That is to use Shu's singing to produce a resonance of the same frequency. With the singing, the virus on people began to disappear, and Sigai's awakening plan was stopped. Shuoma, who arrived, used the void power of his classmates to help him pass many levels. This powerful bond would not be broken. No matter how many difficulties and obstacles lay ahead, Shu would overcome them one by one. After the last battle with Daryl Yan, he finally came to Inori, who had been waiting for him. Who knew that everything would change suddenly at this time? This mysterious figure was the world consciousness. He sent out a void sword from Inori's body. Shu tried to stop him, but the other party expressed disappointment in him, calling him just a fool with the power of the king. When the singing stopped, Sigai's awakening plan was launched again, and the whole country fell into darkness and terror once more. Sigai handed crucial information to the virtual world, which meant their cooperation was over from this moment on. At this time, looking at Inori, who fell in a pool of blood after helping him block the fatal injury, Shu's memory fragments finally began to become clear in his mind. Inori asked Shu to catch up with the mysterious figure quickly because he wanted to use Shu as a sacrifice. But when Shu followed him into the space, the other party asked him to recover his memory first. It turns out that when they were young, Shu and his sister Mana saved a drowning boy. They spent a wonderful summer together when they were best friends, but why did he forget it? Just as he was thinking about this question, he came to his senses and found that Shu was wearing ceremonial clothes and Shuichiro stood beside her, while Shu's feet were fixed in place. Seeing that the plan was about to succeed, Sigai also told Shu the truth. He was the first person to be infected by the virus after touching the Source Stone, and he regarded him as the chosen one. Shu was just a new vessel prepared for Mana's resurrection. Sigai planned to control Mana and unite with her, becoming the master of the next generation of enhanced humans. Witnessed by the figure who was the incarnation of world consciousness, Shuichiro smeared his blood on Inori's mouth. At this moment, Guy and Tsugumi came to rescue them. It turned out that the virtual world wanted to get more power, but at this time, the transformation had already begun and 2 rings turned into red shackles. Seeing that Shu had not recovered all his memories, Guy decided to tell what happened on the day of Lost Christmas. After learning that Mana was infected with the virus, Guy planned to tell his friend Shu, but unexpectedly, it was Mana who arrived first. As a result, the scene where Guy was seriously injured by Mana was seen by Shu, who arrived later. Mana hoped to build a new world with him, but she didn't expect that her beloved brother would call her a monster and push her away. Despair made Mana unable to control the virus in her body. The destruction of his sister Mana made Shu, who could not bear the pain, choose to seal this memory himself. Now they had to prevent Mana from being forcibly awakened. Shu's memory chain was broken, and the mysterious figure was looking forward to what the new king would do. Guy asked Shu to take out his void, which was a black weapon with a strange shape. The two acted separately. Guy provided cover while Shu attacked head-on, and the void great sword appeared again. Shu cut off the connection between Shuichiro and himself with the great sword, and the plan failed. In the mysterious figure's eyes, Shuichiro was useless, and Guy approached Mana with her dying body. She hoped that Shu would bury them together. The grown-up Shu decided to help his friend fulfill her last wish, 2 weeks after the king's death, since there was no signal to contact the outside world. The teachers and students of the school could only wait quietly for news of the unblocking. However, as the quarantine time went by, the students in adolescence gradually became restless. While some students were harassing Tsugumi, Ayas, who was originally going to take action, hesitated. Fortunately, Ogumo appeared in time and dealt with the troublemakers with precise strikes. After the incident, everyone gathered in the conference room. Although Tsugumi could use her abilities to help with basic necessities, they needed to address the growing unrest among students. Yahiro suggested holding a party to relieve everyone's nervous emotions. The suggestion was unanimously agreed upon. In a quiet corner of the school, Yahiro, whose ability had evolved, could now see his own void shape without fainting. While admiring the power of the void, Yahiro also had a premonition that Shu would need to use the power of the king again. Sure enough, when everyone was actively preparing for the party, Daryl-yan, disguised as a student, reported to Sigai about the situation of Funeral Parlor and others in the school. Since GHQ was busy with post-disaster reconstruction, Sigai had distributed weapons to private armed forces. The attack was launched at their school. Seeing the attackers killing people at the party and overwhelming Ayase, who couldn't fight, Shu moved her to safety. Ayase, who has a strong personality, doesn't want to be a burden. She then went on to save her companions at a critical moment. It turns out her void is a pair of powerful legs that can fly at will. At the same time, Shu gathers the void sword again, and together they defeat the enemy's mecha. Their impressive display makes the whole school cheer. However, just when everyone thought the crisis was over and were enjoying the evening's performances, GAQ suddenly announced that to fully eliminate the apocalypse virus, they would thoroughly purify the area around the school. Everyone who learned the news began discussing on the campus network, hoping to elect a leader to guide them through this crisis. Meanwhile, Tsugumi's measuring device was handed over to Shu. Just when everyone was trying different approaches, AAS noticed that no one knew what Ogumo's void was, so they decided to investigate. The virus purification was actually a cruel massacre. While walls were meant to protect from invasion, here they trapped residents inside for slaughter. At this moment, rumors spread wildly on the campus network, claiming that members of Funeral Parlor were asking them to leave the walls. Shu saw notices posted about voting for a student council president. Though he doubted his leadership abilities, Yohiro was confident that Shu was meant to lead. At the same time, the troublemakers who were previously dealt with under the pretense of looking for Funeral Parlor once again targeted Ayase. When Ogumo came to her rescue but was overwhelmed by their numbers, the school broadcast suddenly announced an emergency gathering. When they rushed to the venue, they discovered Tsugumi and Ayase were missing. A man in glasses approached Arisa and brought Tsugumi and Ayase to the stage. Under his guidance and with support from his followers below, the students' emotions were inflamed. They tried to force Tsugumi and Ayase to undress publicly to check for Funeral Parlor markings. When the situation was about to spiral out of control, Shu chose to stand up. With his demonstrated strength in defeating the mecha the day before, he commanded the attention of the entire audience. Shortly after, a vehicle stopped in front of the mecha unit. The students had hoped to exchange Funeral Parlor members for their freedom, but the other side completely betrayed their promise. Not only did they shoot at Shu, but they also killed their own informants to silence them. These scenes of betrayal were broadcast to the venue through Tsugumi's robots. This was when everyone realized there would be no easy escape. It turned out Tsugumi's void was the ability to create exact robotic duplicates. After this incident, the stubborn man in glasses was easily defeated, and Yohiro seized the opportunity to step forward. Following his powerful speech, everyone unanimously elected Shu as student council president. However, as soon as he took office, he found himself at odds with Yohiro. Yohiro suggested ranking students based on their void abilities, but Shu strongly believed all abilities should be treated equally. However, Shu was still naive. Where there are people, there are politics. After discovering their abilities, students naturally began comparing themselves. As resources became scarcer, the equal distribution system began showing its flaws. Originally, his friend Sauda's ability to unlock things seemed powerful, but in practice, he could only open simple things like cans. Because of this, he approached Shu, hoping he wouldn't implement a ranking system. Upon hearing this, Shu quickly denied supporting such a system. Shu, hesitant to make decisions for fear of alienating his classmates, received a gentle confession from Hare. He knew that even though he tried to be gentle, like the kind king in childhood fairy tales, such kindness had its limits. While students were cleaning classrooms, they discovered a list ranking void abilities, with Sauda ranked at the bottom. When questioned about the ranking system again, seeing Shu's uncertain response, Soda made a decision. He convinced Shu to let them borrow void powers for practice, but their real intention was to prove they weren't useless by acting independently. However, when Shu found Soda and the others and tried desperately to convince them to return, they encountered GAQ's cleanup squad again. The inexperienced students quickly suffered casualties, and they could only risk everything to help their classmates escape the gunfire. Soda, who ran to help, hoped Hare would join him in rescuing Shu, but they were spotted by the armed mecha. The explosion from their shells destroyed the vehicle, and the intense heat forced them to make desperate choices in the urgent situation. This was the harsh reality of their new world, where even the gentlest hearts had to face cruel decisions. The innocent days of their school life had been forever changed by the power of the void and the weight of survival. Hare protected Shu under his body. When she woke up, she found her abdomen bleeding heavily, with Shu lying on the ground, dying. Without hesitation, Hare wrapped her life restoration bandage around Shu's body despite her own profuse bleeding. At that moment, the helicopter hovering above launched bullets towards Hare, breaking the bandages around Shu. Hare knew she would die with her void factor destroyed and tried to hold Shu's hand for one last time, but she did not make it. Shu gained consciousness, but he could only watch with wide eyes as Hare turned into crystal fragments and vanishing from existence. The pain of losing Hare caused darkness to well up inside him. For the first time, Shu was pissed as fuck. With dulled eyes, Shu pulled out the void weapon from Yohiro's body. On his path to becoming a leader, Shu despised himself. Why had he taken on the mission but remained neutral? If he hadn't tried to avoid confrontation with his classmates, this tragedy could have been prevented. After all, the Endlaves were destroyed. Shu, who had transformed again, setting aside his compassion and tears. The instructor would never have guessed that the man standing before him, treating him with such coldness, was the guy he once knew. Since Hare's death, a strict hierarchy system had been hastily established. The instructor, unaware of recent events, explained he was only commissioned to escort Arisa from the worship hall. Jai, fearing complications, asked the instructor to accompany them. Everyone's servile attitude in the corridor made the instructor frown. When he saw Shu endangering human life by letting Yahiro, who was infected with multiple diseases, attempt escape by sea alone, the instructor could no longer stand by. He attempted an unauthorized rescue, resulting in confrontation. To lead everyone's escape, Shu abandoned the equal distribution method. Anyone who disagreed would face imprisonment. As the instructor angrily accused Shu of gathering the void factors, Sugumi commanded her robot to explain what had transpired during his absence. After witnessing Shu's strength, the students, overwhelmed by fear of death, saw him as their last hope for survival. Shu became the school's ultimate authority. However, Shu, who appeared strong to others, only showed his gentle side when alone with Inori. Just now, Inori's different tone gave Shu pause. But before he could dwell on it, his subordinates reported the instructor's escape. But where could the instructor run in a weakened school? He was soon cornered. The instructor, no longer attempting to flee, decided to confront Shu. Their duel ended quickly, leaving the instructor bewildered by how things had changed. When Shu asked what solution the instructor had for their current situation, he was left speechless. Yahiro appeared with a gun, ending the confrontation, but an accident occurred. A falling steel beam shattered a student's void factor. Gay watched as his classmate's body began to crystallize. Exactly like Shu's death, Arisa, waiting for updates, witnessed this. Guy demanded answers from Shibunji about whether Shu's death was also related to void factor damage. Shibunji explained that if everyone knew void factors could be destroyed, their established system would collapse. To ensure everyone's escape, they chose to attack the instructor, concealing the truth. The escape plan was nearly ready, but critical news arrived: Arisa had been attacked. Hearing this, Yahiro recalled the previous night vaguely. Arisa had wanted to publicize the void factor truth, so he had injured her, worsening the situation. Arisa, who nearly died, used Sigai to spread information online about the void factor's destructive nature. Students dissatisfied with the system finally found their reason to rebel. After seeing the news, Yahiro rushed to find Arisa, hoping she would clarify things before his reputation was ruined. However, Arisa demanded fair treatment. During their conversation, Yahiro confessed to Shu that he might have hurt Arisa, though his anxiety made the details hazy. Shu was about to make Yahiro promise that no one could harm him. Yahiro appeared first, handing over the perpetrator to Shu for Arisa's sake. However, Shu refused to compromise regarding Yahiro, even drawing his weapon against his former friend. To overthrow him, Arisa betrayed herself, exchanging student information with Sigai. As expected, what her mother said made sense. The prettier a woman, the more likely to deceive. The Great Escape began, and Shu, having received intelligence from Arisa, launched his plan. He ordered everyone to clear a path while he would disable Tokyo Tower's signal. If successful, everyone would escape smoothly. As he spoke, GHQ's Indlaves were already approaching. Just as panic spread, Arisa activated the defense umbrella, stabilizing army morale. The battle commenced. 280 students charged against 20 Indlaves with void weapons. Despite their numerical advantage, the battle turned brutal. Shu, not helping directly, followed the path where his classmates had sacrificed themselves, wielding the void sword. He rushed to Tokyo Tower, finally reaching the core energy tower through a hail of bullets. Without hesitation, he thrust in his weapon. The explosion completed their mission, causing all Endlife troops to lose signal and become scrap metal. After darkness comes dawn. Watching everyone evacuate orderly, the burden lifted, and he called for Yahiro to leave together. However, when Shu turned around, he found Sigai and others aiming their guns at him. To his shock, the instructor held Yahiro at gunpoint. Arisa's coup began. Shu, who had given them survival hope moments before, was pushed into a deep pit by his friend Hiro the next second. As everyone betrayed Shu, Inori, who tried to run to him, became his only light. Suddenly, a laser pierced Inori's chest. The Endlave troops attacked again. The figure standing at the pit's edge was somehow Guy, whom had died. What was happening? While Shu stood confused, Guy swung his blade, severing his arm. The king's power in his right hand was successfully inherited by Guy. Due to 2 consecutive weather virus outbreaks in Japan that year, the United Nations voted to destroy the country. However, when bombers flew overhead to begin destructive bombing, Mana's actions were beyond imagination. After extracting the Void Factor's energy, she upgraded to group damage, sparing no student present. The Void Factors became tracking missiles under her control, like a single arrow breaking through thousands of formations. After Mana destroyed the enemy bombers, the students whose Void Factors were extracted perished. Mana, standing before Ground Zero and the pit, was no longer the Trinity Society's leader. She had completely become GHQ's puppet. Daryl, who secretly admired Guy, disobeyed orders and attempted to eliminate Mana himself when Guy was endangered. However, how could one person break through the Endlave blockade? Fortunately, funeral parlor members successfully escaped after witnessing these events. Soon after, half of Japan's air fleet was destroyed by the funeral parlor satellite, threatening the United Nations. The world fell silent, and Arisa, following Mana's orders, began hunting Yahiro. Just as they locked onto their target, a black car blocked their path, leading to immediate gunfight. Arisa quickly stopped them. It was her family's car. The Kuan patriarch, learning his granddaughter had sided with GHQ under Mana, decided to handle things personally. The old man's blade work was impressive, faster than gunfire within 7 steps. After taking down 3 opponents, he never expected his granddaughter would shoot at him. When Inori learned they meant to capture her, she fled in the chaos. Unexpectedly, she encountered thugs on her escape, but when Inori opened her eyes, she found their blood covering her. Terrified, she froze. Meanwhile, Shu, now missing his right hand, lived in beautiful memories, growing more depressed daily. Inori knew that continuing this way would eventually lead her to kill Guy herself, replacing Mana's soul, so Inori decided to knock Shu unconscious and face the risk alone, transforming into a killing machine to destroy the pursuing Endlaves. After learning of Heiro's arrest, Guy regained his spirit and attempted to find him by taking Arisa hostage, but unexpectedly discovered his mother Haruka was wanted. Meanwhile, Sagai used residents desperate for vaccines to trick open funeral parlors' doors. By the time they realized, it was too late. More terrifying was that Sagai, who had pretended to be weak, revealed his true strength. Finally, with many funeral parlor members' sacrifices, they successfully covered Haruka's escape to headquarters. Shibungi learned from her that, although Haruka had initially planned to deal with Mana, who hadn't fully awakened, Shuichiro had stopped her. With no other options, Haruka took the last vaccine but faced a dilemma. If the Void Genome activated Death's power again, even if it could stop Mana, Death would still await. At that moment, intense gunfire erupted outside, and the virtual world seemed to resurrect. Shu followed their pursuit, while Guy, arriving moments later, noticed Inori's locator after witnessing the attack on Funeral Parlor's medical clinic. He made the decisive choice to leap from the vehicle to save his mother alone. Inori asked Haruka to give her the vial, but fate had other plans. Sige appeared and shot the vial away with his gun, but he never expected that Ayase, despite being unable to use her legs, would risk her life to retrieve it. During the confrontation between Segai and Ayase, as if by destiny, the vial rolled to Shu's feet. Unlike his previous accidental ascension to kingship, Shu, who had experienced life's many trials, made his own choice this time. Since everything began because of him, he felt responsible for bearing the sins he had brought. Even when his mother warned him that using the potion would be fatal, that the crown would become a burden, and that the power would become his wound though he appeared to be king, this was truly about a boy's journey to maturity. Shu clutched his chest, and something extraordinary occurred. His damaged right hand was replaced by the void, creating such brilliant light that it made even the virtual world cry out in celebration of the king's emergence. After absorbing the void, Shu transformed it into Guy's sword in his hand and struck down to break through the enemy forces. The virtual world went wild at this sight. The armored vehicle's face resembled Daryl, who sat motionless on the ground. It was Shu who finally brought this battle to its conclusion. The Interval's lifeline was severed, and the out-of-control vehicle crashed into the wall, exploding. The reborn Shu walked out of the flames in measured steps as everyone watched. At this moment, the sharp-eyed Tsugumi noticed the problem and rushed to absorb Sige's virus. His void gathered everything: strength and weakness, light and darkness, all of it. Jai, that is your destiny, he declared. Do you think this is your own will, Shu? Jay questioned. If this sorrow, if this apocalypse can be replaced by my burden, I will accept it, Shu responded. As long as the malice is resolved, everything will be fine. Mana, I'm leaving now. Did you know that Dr. Oma and Shu's father were best friends in their school days? They shared similar ideas and competed academically. 4 years later, they achieved great success, but when Dr. Oma was about to share his joy, he discovered his best friend and the school beauty were expecting a child. 5 years later, a mysterious object fell on the island and was discovered by young Mana. While studying it, Dr. Oma and Shu's father discovered the Apocalypse virus. When Mana's abilities manifested, a mysterious entity appeared before Dr. Oma and Shu's father as a world consciousness. It declared that Earth's life would be eliminated and evolved, with Mana as the future Eve, and Shu's father's child chosen by Mana as Adam. Ultimately, Shu's mother died giving birth to him, and after Dr. Oma learned his friend's bloodline would rule the future, jealousy corrupted him. To find a more suitable Adam, Oma secretly conducted human experiments on children. Unable to bear it, Haruka found a chance to escape from the Institute but was unexpectedly rescued by Mana and Guy at sea. This twist of fate was truly ironic. Later, daughter, Oma's sister met Shu's father, who worked diligently in the office every day. She was drawn to his unique character, and they quickly married. She took Guy under her wing. They planned to spend Christmas together as a family, but that day Dr. Oma went to submit Shu's father's research results. He was shocked to discover that Shu's father had independently solved the evolution problem. Jealousy drove Dr. Oma to shoot his former friend. On that same day, the out-of-control Mana triggered the apocalypse virus. Now, the living king of power, Guy, announced to the world that he would create a new world on December 25th. To stop Guy's plan, the members of Funeral Parlor regrouped, and the UN chose to launch a preemptive strike. However, everything they did seemed futile to Guy. He absorbed the void factors of Inori and the others simultaneously, creating a mystical bow and arrow. A single shot caused 87% damage to the UN warship. Seeing the situation was decided, Dan Eagleman ordered the Mecha troops to clean up the battlefield. After witnessing the UN's defeat, Funeral Parlor prepared their attack. The final battle began. Shu's copying ability successfully distracted the enemy, giving Tsugumi time to crack their security system. As the GHQ computers turned red, all mecha troops became worthless scrap. Shibungi and Sige's forces successfully reached the core area. Meanwhile, Guy began erasing Inori's memories and consciousness, transforming her into Truth's vessel. Guy hadn't expected that his actions wouldn't earn Inori's hatred. Instead, she was grateful to him for giving her life. Through her time with Shu, Inori had witnessed the world's sadness and beauty. Watching an innocent boy mature through various hardships, she had discovered love during this journey. Shu arrived at the central control room, following Inori's song. The mysterious entity appeared, admiring Shu for regaining the power of kings. It offered him a choice to join with Truth and oversee humanity's elimination and evolution. However, Shu refused. The entity showed no more mercy and began absorbing the void factor to fight him. In their second confrontation, Shu easily defeated the entity with his ability to absorb and gather energy. However, Inori completely lost her resistance and transformed into an otherworldly flower, consuming all of Truth and completing the final resurrection. Purple energy enveloped the world from this central point. The awakened Truth felt it had been merely a long dream and greeted Shu enthusiastically. However, facing Truth, who appeared identical to Inori, Shu's reaction remained unchanged. He pushed Truth away. Hurt once again, Truth decided to end everything. Truth drew the void sword with the king's power. The ground became covered in honeycomb patterns, signaling the world's destruction. With graceful movements, each ground section represented a different part of the world, becoming infected with the apocalypse virus. Humanity's evolution and elimination began. Shu summoned Guy's weapon to try stopping Truth's plan. However, his weapons couldn't match Truth's void sword. Just when Shu, severely injured, felt he had failed everyone's expectations, he seemed to hear Inori's voice through the light, connecting the void factor with the red spider lily. The song dissolved Truth's energy. Funeral Parlor seized this opportunity to launch their counterattack, determined to defeat Truth. Unlike Truth wielding the void sword, Shu and Inori had merged into one. With all their combined strength, they struck with Shu's blade and Truth vanished. After the plan failed, Guy chose to end his life. When Shu entered Mana's inner world, he understood her intentions. If the apocalypse virus had succeeded, everyone's memories would have been sealed by crystals. Guy had initially wanted to end everything himself, but realized only Shu could truly stop Truth, so he forced Shu to mature, finally ending Truth's tragic fate. Now he had to disappear with Truth. When Shu regained consciousness, he saw Inori dragging her crystallizing body toward him. Looking at his blind lover, Shu slowly raised his arm to end the apocalypse virus, allowing the world to return to normal. This way, he could peacefully leave this world with Inori. However, just as Shu's consciousness began fading, Inori appeared before him and took his hand. This time, Shu didn't refuse. Shu chose to sacrifice himself to save his lover. The destruction of the GHQ headquarters marked the return of peace. 1 year later, Funeral Parlor gathered again to discuss their future lives. A powerless Shu appeared before everyone once more.